Joe, you're live.
All right, great. Well, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this Board of Supervisors of Election virtual meeting to order on Thursday, April 18th at 7 p.m. And roll call. So Debbie Yatzik.
Here.
Keanu Smith-Brown.
Present.
And Eileen Leahy present. Also want to note that Regina Watkins Eldridge, City Clerk, is present, and also Ashley Leonard of the Office of Law is with us, and Cynthia Reuter of the Office of Law is also with us. So we have a pretty full agenda tonight. So I do want to ask for an amended agenda item. Regina had received, I guess Regina and Ashley had received notification that the county attorney had a question for us. So I just want to put that item on a review of the county attorney's request. So,
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I can move to amend the agenda to add, yes,
okay.
to add.
Okay, anybody, can you second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so the next item is comments. There were no comments submitted. We'll go on to approval of the minutes. And any comments?
No.
No major comments. I think all looks fine to me.
I did have a question, Regina, under the general discussion where we talked about the ballot questions, you left an opening. It says member Yatzik moved for ballot questions in section, and it was a blank. So I believe it was chapter 4.40 ballot question procedures.
Okay, I'll add that.
Yeah, and also I went back and I listened to the video, and it sounds like what the actual motion was to require 10% of the total registered voters as of January of the current year, with 250 minimum registered voters from each ward.
That was, you did that motion at the last meeting, remember?
Correct, but it's not reflected as such in the minutes. That's why I was just checking.
Yeah, because you voted on it in the last meeting, and we talked about the fact it was in the minutes at the previous meeting.
Well, we did do the.
Yeah, it was. Remember, it was in the previous meeting, and you guys tried to make the motion twice.
Right, the 10%, but I thought we rewrote it because we wanted to include the 250 registered voters
from each ward.
That was not in our previous motion.
All right.
So I can send what I pulled out from it. So it said require 10% of the total registered voters as of January of the current year, with 250 minimum registered voters from each ward.
I'm glad we're maybe a little more specific there, especially for the minutes.
Mm-hmm. And then under surplus funds, there was another blank after Member Leahy moved to add an additional third option to section, and there was a blank. And the section that we were looking at was 4.44.040B.
Because you guys didn't state it, and I put the section there so I could go back and look for it. I must have.
Yeah, and did we end up actually voting? Because I thought we deferred it since there had been a previous motion and vote on that matter.
I don't know. I have to listen to it again.
It's at the very, very end. I couldn't find it, but I was kind of rushing, so maybe I missed it.
I don't recall, Eileen.
I don't have it in my notes.
Okay, so could we just defer approval of the minutes till next month until we just clarify that?
Yep.
Okay, let's just do that, because I want to make sure we get it right.
Sure.
And I know it was confusing because there was a lot of back and forth talking. Okay, any other comments about the minutes?
No, those are great adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, so we'll defer until we get those two straightened out. Okay, all right, thanks, Regina.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, okay. So old business. We went through a lot of proposed legislation for review last time. We didn't take any actual votes because we were still drafting a bit. And
Mhm.
Cynthia's been great about
Yeah.
reviewing some of that. I did not have an opportunity to review in detail as much as I would have liked.
Yeah.
So we may not get to finalizing some of it tonight, but we'll do the best we can. So first up is mail-in voting.
Okay.
And
I will agree. We did have much, if I may, to look over these
Yeah,
recent past days, and I'm doing my best to
Right.
go through them all.
me too. Yeah.
It's wonderful.
if we feel we need more, I mean, we can go over them now and make some comments. If we feel that we, I don't think we're gonna be able to vote on some of them tonight because we're still looking at it. We're gonna also have to send them up to the county and see if they kind of, fits in with what they're thinking.
I would like to work on just this. Of all the ones I saw, this is the only one I think that could use a little legal finessing. It's nothing substantive, but I just feel like there's some redundancies in there and some things that could be a little legally clearer.
Mhm.
But the other ones, other than one note comment, which I emailed Cynthia earlier today, I didn't have any other legal concerns with the other ones.
Okay, would you prefer that we give you the opportunity to review this more closely and we'll just look at it again next month? More finalized?
It's up to you. Like I said, I don't think there's anything substantive, like that you guys would vote on anything procedurally. I just think it could use a little streamlining.
Assumption. Right,
Yeah, a little streamlining, a little tweaking, just to clarify some stuff. But it wouldn't change the intent of
Okay.
the anything.
okay.
So it's up to you guys.
Cynthia, do you have any comments on this?
I don't have any comments. I'll go with whatever you guys decide to do.
I had one, it was on the culling,
Okay,
the opportunity to correct time frame. Let me see which one that was. You did do great, Cynthia. There's a lot of good stuff here.
what page are you on, Debbie?
I'm looking at I'm trying to find the right one for the culling. It's B2, but I don't. it's
Is
not-
that opportunity to correct?
Yeah, which one is that?
That is B2, rejecting mail-in ballots. I literally is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
B2,
What
That's
page,
B2 on
though?
which page?
That is on
I'm trying to find the right one.
page 6. Page 6.
Is it on the mail-in vote? No.
It's
Are
on
you
the
talking
main-
about the review of application and ballot envelope for completeness?
Reporting deadline. Yeah, my question was the time frame. I know we have 3 days. Yeah, so it's about the signature mostly. And we have 3 days to notify them of a missing signature, but I did not see a deadline for them to fix it. Like, we have a deadline to let them know that there needs to be an adjustment or a correction, but what is there something in there that says when they need to fix it by?
I would assume they need to fix it by the deadline for getting everything in.
Right,
Okay.
that's what
But-
I would think.
We can clarify that.
I'm sorry, what page are you on, Debbie? Because I'm not finding it.
Page 6 and 7. Page 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
At the bottom, B2 into B2A.
Gotcha,
and
gotcha. I didn't go down far enough. Okay.
Okay, I'm on the wrong page. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just the deadline to get it completed. And if it's not completed by that deadline, it doesn't get accepted.
Okay.
We're talking about the deadline to vote.
This is the application
Yeah.
or the mail-in. No, it's the mail-in ballots. I apologize. So it's the mail-in ballot. So if it's not completed,
He had, I thought it was on a different one, but maybe not B2. Yeah, okay, yep, that's it. That was the space. Yeah, I guess if that's assumed, but it wouldn't hurt to
Yeah,
add.
that'd be nice.
Add the, the deadline for accepting any ballot.
Now, if I'm at the question I was going to ask though, does that date change? Because if that date changes, it should at least not have a specific day or month in that. Maybe it is just as the 3 days. Maybe it's more so a number that's broad or something. But I don't know if that date is just concrete always. So if we do put that date in there, we should be like no later than 30 days. That's how we should talk in those forms.
Or just by the date that the deadline for ballots to be received.
Yes.
All ballots need to be received. I mean, that's in the code. I mean, they either have to be received in the drop boxes by the end of the poll, by the end of when the polls end, or received by the 10 a.m. on the day of the canvass. So they have to be submitted. They either have to be postmarked or actually physically put in a drop box. So if a ballot has been received and does not have the oath signed, it doesn't get counted. If the oath had not been signed when it came in, but a signature came in, that will be attached to it, and then it will be reviewed in the canvas.
Well, this is, the opportunity to correct. The board shall notify a voter of failure to sign the oath not later than 3 days after the date the board found that should be omission. This says after the date the board found the commission, but I think it's omission.
Correct, yeah.
And then B, the voter may supply a signature to the board either through mail or in person, but it doesn't say by when.
All right, so you want to add that?
I can certainly add that.
Okay.
So that would be a number 3.
Mm-hmm. Cynthia, did you use the word may for any reason? Because may is similar to maybe, or like an option to.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
If you do shall, then that's a requirement that you do it. And if you don't do it, it could lead to consequences.
Right, it should be
Sure, but
shall.
if we do it for one and we don't do it for the other, that's also not fair for everyone.
Well, it all depends on if you have the information to contact them.
Sure.
So.
Which do you prefer?
I think may is appropriate because we're not forcing them to fix it.
Yeah, this is about notifying them, Debbie.
I was looking at the may and B.
No, I'm looking.
So that first sentence there does conflict with A.
You're right. Well, in B1 we say shall, in B2 may, and then 2A is shall and 2B is may.
Right. I'll change them all to shall.
Now, but what Eileen said, I do agree that if we don't have the contact information,
They don't all have to be matching. I mean, it's a given that if there's no oath signed, it's a given. It gets rejected.
So that's shall. That's one.
Opportunity to correct is a may notify, because if you suppose it says the board may notify the voter of the application error. If it shows up on election day, you don't have 3 days to tell them.
Right. Also, it depends upon the error. The may gives you a little flexibility, whether it's a big error or a small error. 2A says not signing the oath is a big error and they need to be notified.
If we can find them, or I guess we should be able to find them. If they're registered voters.
Right, and if they filled everything out correctly.
Right, and sometimes there's other errors which the opportunity to correct also addresses other than the oath. So there could be an envelope error in that two people have put their ballots in the ballot. But let me go back and look at this a second. I'm reading this now and I'm saying the board may notify the voter of the application of ballot envelope error. We're not talking about the application. We're talking about the mail-in ballot.
Yeah, that was another question I had. If that was worded, if application needed to be in there. The board may notify.
I was just saying, if you are going to switch it to shall, which I don't care, it's your guys' decision. It should be like shall use best efforts to.
That I like that. I think that's
because that gives you the shall that you have to make some sort of effort to do it. But ultimately, if you're unable to do it, it doesn't lock you in as much as a hard shall would.
Mm-hmm. Whereas may gives it a loose.
May means we can do it in our discretion,
which isn't right. I think.
But shall use best efforts to means we'll make it an attempt. But if you haven't filled out your stuff properly, if you're not registered, if you're too close to the deadline, then it is what it is.
Yeah, I like that.
So Cynthia, are you okay with it? The board shall attempt to notify the voter. I think that's a good.
Shall use best efforts to.
Shall make best efforts. Okay. Still on number 2, opportunity to correct. We're talking about two things. We're talking about the application. We're talking about the ballot envelope. So in number 1, it says, shall reject a mail-in ballot if the voter failed to sign the oath on the mail-in application or the ballot return envelope. So that wording should be similar. The board shall make best efforts to notify the voter of a failure to sign the oath of the mail-in application or ballot return envelope. And
yeah, that needs to be.
They need to be consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understood what was said in number 1, but not in number 2 with the wording was just, we missed something, or I was going to delete the application and just work on the ballot, but yeah, it is both the application and the ballot.
Yeah. So, got that. This is the board. Okay, so we're good there. All right, any other questions?
Not on that one. There was some spelling errors on the last one, I think. They were marked, so I know you'll see them. They got underlined.
Okay, I will do another check on that throughout.
Yeah,
the
it was
document.
Number 15, and I think it was on the, yeah, number 15 on the last attachment, which was definitions.
All right, well, we're still on the ballot.
Oh, okay, sorry. Everything else.
All right, okay, so any other comments on mail-in ballot?
Not to what about so is there a reason wherever this came? I know we did specify what a duly authorized agent could be, or who they could be, their age. What about the D, which is may be an agent for only one voter per election? Was that there? I take it in case of fraud? Or what if there were two persons that were relatives of that person that couldn't go and vote?
What page are you on?
We're on page 5, assistance allowed.
Well, they only need one person to assist them. But that one person can only assist one person. And that's really focused mostly on preventing ballot harvesting.
That's what I was getting at, but never know if fraud and things like that. I'm just saying where it came from.
Where you're asking where what came from?
Where maybe an agent for only one voter per election came.
I think that's state law, and I think that's kind of what we've done.
Yes.
I remember that as well from
Pretty,
before.
pretty much everything in red is from the county and the state. The county and the state are pretty much the same.
Good.
So that's to prevent people from, say, going into
Figure.
a senior center or going into something else and signing off on everybody. So, okay.
Okay.
All right, so we'll make that change for number 3 and also change on omission in 4.28060. Cynthia will add the changes. We'll get a chance to look at it more closely. And Ashley will also give a legal review of it. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And maybe if we're lucky, we can get this done by the next meeting, if not before.
Yes, we should.
Okay. All right. Okay, Debbie, you wanted to go on to?
Well, it was going to the last one. I don't know if, well, it's called definitions.
Okay.
Definitions 2.0. And of all those that were attached, it was the last one. And it was just number 15. It's in bold. And it just, there's just 2 spelling errors that, it says Dropbox shall be containers designated by the BOD. So, I think it's Dropbox shall be containers designated by the board.
Okay. What was the word again?
It's number 15 on the definition section, and shall, it says shaller, and it should be shall. And
Right.
board was just missing an R. It does show that the edit system caught the errors. They do have squiggly red lines under them. Just, it's a single line about Dropbox containers.
All right. I'll make sure that gets fixed.
Thank you. You did great.
Well, I had some additional definitions to add, but I kind of wanted some feedback from Ashley as far as how deep do we go with these definitions? I mean, is it better to have them or not to have them?
I like it.
I mean, it's a fine line because in theory, you don't want to define like every word because that just gets onerous.
Mhm.
So what words were you thinking of, I guess?
Well, I was thinking of, well, Dropbox had been one of them we had in there. Do we need to add, say, or at least define election year? And the reason for that was because it differs from, say, election calendar.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be useful.
Okay.
But the election year is described in the charter.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, or I mean, you can reference it back. But Regina's right. It is in the charter. The problem is most people don't go to look in the charter.
Right.
So we wouldn't want to define it any differently than the charter. So
Okay.
maybe you just include a sentence that says election year has the meaning specified in this section of the charter or something.
Okay. Now, doesn't the election calendar, though, does differ from the election year?
Yes, it does.
So would it be helpful to define that? So for instance, I forget what, I don't know, I can't remember if that's in the charter too.
I don't
Regina.
think calendar is.
It starts like August 4th. It's more than a year. It's actually not a
Well,
year.
it's kind of like backhandedly described. Like when they talk about like the reports, like you figure out where the election calendar is, but you have to read multiple sections, I think, to piece them together about when things start and stop.
So is it worthwhile to have it defined here or just kind of leave it out there?
No, I mean, I'm just one voice. My vote would be that election year, you do the reference to the charter, and election calendar, we define in some manner, because I feel like a lot of people get those confused, especially for the reporting requirements.
That's where it came up.
Well,
Okay. And again, this is another one that's, I believe, defined in the code already, and that's independent expenditures.
yeah, but it's not good enough.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of was going through, just trying to. Again, it's, I believe it's defined in the code, but do we want to put it here, just refer to it, or just not add it?
Where is it defined elsewhere in the code? Is it?
I think it's in the section.
Oh, okay.
I don't have the
I
code
mean-
right in front of me.
I mean, if it's in the section, I mean, that's less inclined. I mean, when I draft things, sometimes you have the definitions up front, but sometimes you do define as you go. I say as long as it's within your Title IV, I'm less inclined. If it's already defined in Title IV, I'm less inclined to add it to the definition section. If it's found elsewhere or not defined really at all, or like you have to piece like 3 different provisions together to get there, then I'd say
Right.
do a definition.
All right, well, I'll look into that. I'll check that.
Because election cycle is in the definitions. So does.
But I don't know if we
election cycle-
use, I don't know if we actually use election cycle. That's what I'd have to control F and see how we use election cycle versus election calendar. Yeah.
Because number 17 is election cycle.
I mean, it could be that those are like kind of duplicative, and then you just sort of want to make.
The definition of election cycle is the last page of the election calendar. It's the definition is there already.
It's the last page of the
On the
election.
if you look at the calendar and you go down, it says the election cycle starts on this day and ends on this day.
Right, but I mean, then people have to actually go find the calendar.
But I thought the calendar was a procedural working document for us. So why are we trying to?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we have election cycle defined, that might be
Enough.
what needs to be sort of like referenced. But I haven't looked at it that closely on those two. But I do know it is for purposes of reporting that I know a lot of the candidates struggle on figuring out when those dates are. Because in theory, yes, the election calendar, like the physical calendar, is a working document. So the election cycle might be the better defined term. I just have to look in Title IV and see what's being used back and forth.
Okay, well, let's take a look at that then.
Yeah.
All right. Then I'll look at expenditures. The current draft does not have mail-in voting as a defined? Do we need to define that?
No, because technically I think it's still absentee. Because I think, well, at least the last conversation is, the problem is absentee should be defined to include mail-in, but I don't know if we want to specifically spell out, because the state doesn't even really define mail-in. They just define it as absentee, like mail-in is one type of absentee procedure, essentially.
Okay.
And our code and our charter used throughout absentee. So I think it would be better if we're going to define it as we circle it back around as a form of absentee voting, which I thought we kind of had done, but I need to look at that closer.
That is in version 2.1, and I think I think y'all are looking at 2.0.
Right.
Because we do need to connect the dots, because the same way the state had to connect the dots, because the state continues to use absentee as the defined term everywhere. And then they just indicate that mail-in is one type of absentee. So we should kind of mirror the same thing, unless, and I don't think we want to, unless you want to go through a full-blown hunt through the whole city code to pull out all the absent.
That was the goal, to do the hunt, to change all the words absentee.
Well, we have not then we haven't accomplished that, because absentee is throughout all of Title IV and the charter.
Well, we haven't gotten through the entire Title IV.
Right.
But go ahead.
My legal recommendation is not to remove absentee, because if you remove absentee, then you're going to have issues with how the state law is written. State law still uses absentee. They don't use mail-in. They use mail-in as a type of absentee, but they have not removed absentee from state laws. So if we remove it from ours, and we have the county, well, the state board through the county administer, I think it's going to cause a glitch. So you guys can do what you want, but I believe my recommendation was not to remove all the absentees.
I agree with Ashley.
All right, well, and I think that, that was on, that actually discussion, I think, was involved with the mail-in balloting.
Yeah, I know I've had this discussion before. I just don't think, I originally was thinking that it would be okay to remove the absentee, but I just don't think the way our state is set up and the county board is set up and everything, that if we remove it, it's just going to create a ripple effect of confusion.
All right, well.
Yeah, I think last meeting we talked about where it was, and it was on the elections website, where it says the law requires the state board of elections and each local board of elections to refer to absentee ballots as mail-in ballots and absentee voting as mail-in voting. Please note that
right. That's in like mailings and in education. In their actual laws, they haven't changed it. So what I think I suggested, I'll have to go back and look at my notes, is we can discuss mail-in voting, but rather than switching them all, we just include, like, I had included language that basically says mail-in and absentee are essentially the same.
Right.
But, and I know I did that, I just don't remember.
Right. Well, when we get back up to the top, when we start actually going through the definitions, we might find that during the absentee ballot. I'll just go ahead real quick and add the other. I think there were only a couple of others that I thought, did we want to include as a definition? Oh, the other one was recount. Again, do we want to include that as a definition?
It's more procedure to me than a defined term.
Okay.
But that's just my thought.
Debbie or Keanu, do you have any thoughts?
No.
Well,
on recount.
What would we say about, like, what would the definition be? Do we have any thoughts on what that definition would be?
Well,
it essentially be like the process of.
Yeah. I mean, Keanu just.
I think it would be nice, Eileen, seeing that we yes, going to what Debbie you're talking about. If we're going to dive a little deeper into a process for recounting, at least it sets us up especially in the defining terms, to be specific in what that'll mean when the time comes, if we do decide, if the council decides to put that forth.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm with that, Eileen.
Okay, so Kiana, could you check for a definition to propose for that?
Yes, I actually, there is a definition that was included on the document sent. So maybe we can use that definition, and I can share that.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing on the last page.
Right, well, let's see what's in code first.
Yeah, it's,
If-
yeah,
if-
there's a
if-
summary
if
there.
it's in
Okay.
code and we can use that, I think would be the first thing to do.
Now,
Right.
which word are you talking about?
Recount.
Recount. So it's not in there now. It would be added.
Right, I'm just reviewing the ones that I thought might be helpful to have.
Yeah.
Are there any other definitions that anybody would like to
Yeah.
propose? And then we'll start going through the ones that are there now.
Yes, I didn't see candidate on here. I know last meeting we said we would define what that was a little bit clearer. And whereas it's the same.
You mean how long you are a candidate?
Well, when we said that we would specify that you're considered a candidate when
Right.
you have a campaign account open, I think we laid it all out.
Well, number 10 is candidate.
Yes, and it doesn't say
For how long?
it doesn't say what it is, what it can only talks about how
You file.
here it's a person who files. But we're not saying that you're considered a candidate not only if you're filing, but if you have your campaign account open, if there's still,
Right.
I know if you still have discrepancies on your in your account or on your account.
Well,
If
you never.
you start fundraising early. So like you hit, even if you haven't submitted your forms, if you have fundraised, I think it's what, $300, you automatically become a candidate.
Right.
So this
So
just says
another one that needs definition. Okay. Going back to recount, I'm just looking at code and I don't see a definition.
Okay.
mhm.
Okay. All right. Shall we go through the list then and look at the ones that we have, the ones
do
in
it.
red that are being proposed?
Mhm.
Okay. I have to find it again. All right, so Ashley, you can maybe help us with this one because the first one is approved voting device, and that's right out of code. Do we just, it says approved voting device means a paper ballot approved under section 4.24060 or Anne Arundel County Board of Election has an addition to it. Do we want the whole thing? Or Cynthia, is that already in there? Or is that
I'm sorry, which document are you in?
approved? I'm in the definitions, approved voting device number 1. Is that a definition that's just already in code, or it looks like
Yes.
it's just the first part?
Yeah. If it's,
Yeah, it is. I think
it-
it's just outdated is the problem.
Okay. Well,
What is it? What is being proposed now? Sorry, I was Google
I'm just-
searching for year, calendar, and
I'm
everything
just
else.
starting to go through the definitions to make sure that we're all okay with the definitions. And
now on
actually,
the definitions, are you in? You should have a draft 2.1.
I'm
Where,
in
this is
2.1.
I'm looking at 2.0.
Yes, same. Let me go to 2.1.
Do you have a 2.1?
Yeah, did 2.1 get sent out?
I thought that's the one I sent out. If not, I will send it out.
Okay.
If I can find it.
Oh, yeah,
No.
I'm gonna see if I can find
yeah,
it.
that's currently in there,
Okay, so I
and
don't want
it's
to change
it's
anything that doesn't need to be changed.
it's fine. It's or a voting device approved that by Anne Arundel County, which generally is not a paper ballot anymore. But yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm sorry, it just takes me a while to get through this.
Also, I would stick with election cycle is defined. So that's what really should be referenced. Election calendar is not used anywhere in Title 14 or Title 4. Only election cycle is used.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm still trying to get this.
Sorry.
Oh, why is it my computer acting up? Okay, let's see. 2.1, 2.1. You guys can go ahead as I try to, oh, you still need the 2.1 though.
Or
Debbie,
we can,
do you have it in front of you, Cynthia?
I
I
do.
can send you the one that I have that has my changes on it. Why don't I just do that? Because I can pull that one up right away. Okay, I just sent it to Debbie and to Keanu.
okay,
So sorry for the confusion.
no problem.
All right. Okay, so did you get it?
I don't see it yet.
All right, well, some of these, I can't remember how much it changes. The next one is absentee ballot.
I have it right here.
We're good. So again, with absentee ballot, it says means a ballot not used in a polling place. Is it currently, how is it currently defined in code? If at all?
The state definition of absentee ballot says it means a ballot not used in a polling place.
We don't have a current definition in our code.
Okay.
But I think this does make sense, especially with Ashley was saying about that being the general terminology used for mail-in ballot is one of the examples of it. Because if this is what it is, not being in a polling place, mail-in ballot's not usually in a polling place. So going back to what you said, it makes sense.
In 2.1, after absentee ballot, you'll see the law language that was passed regarding reterming absentee ballot.
Yeah, I think unfortunately I was looking at the wrong ones too, Cynthia. So I might not need to rehash that if you got it in your 2.1.
You want me to send it to you, Ashley?
Sure.
Okay.
Because it sounds like Cynthia did get whatever I was babbling about earlier. But yeah, we don't currently define absentee ballot. We just sort of talk about it.
Right.
Yep, that's exactly what comes from the website, number one, Cynthia. So
So do we want to keep it simple like that, or do we want to get into more?
well, that's going to be included, right? The C12, that's going to be a part of it.
That's the question.
I think if we do that, though, we don't really do that anywhere else. But
We'll wait and see what Ashley said, because Ashley had brought this up in a review of one of the other documents. Did you get it, Ashley?
No, not yet. But I mean, what Cynthia read sounds like what we had discussed.
Okay. Well, when you get it, we'll just need to decide how we want to incorporate it as a definition.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get that either, but that's okay.
you didn't have it's on your name?
No, I know.
2.1, it's at the
Yeah,
very top.
it hasn't come through and I have a pretty good system, but I
Oh.
don't see it.
All right, well, we'll hopefully it'll come back.
Okay.
All right.
With this again. So number 3 then is ballot or official ballot. And we have, absentee ballot. And my query was, it's unclear. I don't know, do we still use this term? But I guess if we're going to define it above, we can keep it in there.
Yeah,
I
that
also
is
wasn't
the state
sure.
definition of ballot.
So what is a document ballot or a voting machine ballot then? And do we don't
Was
need.
voting machine
language.
the scanner, the punch where
Sounds like it when you
you
go
punch
into
the number? I mean, you punch, there's no paper.
Yeah, a voting machine ballot would be the paperless.
Yeah.
The document ballot would be the paper version.
Well, all the ballots are going to be paper. It's just the paper goes through the scanner.
Yeah, I guess the state definition is taking account into the areas that do use the machine only version.
Okay. So is there any reason not to use these to include these in the definition? I'm just, again, wasn't sure what we were talking about and if we needed to include them.
I wouldn't think it wouldn't hurt to include them.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should include them.
All right. All right,
Now
Gemma.
you'll notice in there's also, I gave 2 definitions of ballot drop box because you requested that last time, I believe. I have the state definition and then I have the U.S. Election Assistance Commission.
Okay, so we're moving on to number 4. Well, you had added Dropbox down and Dropbox turned up in 15. Do we want to call it ballot Dropbox or do we want to call it Dropbox?
That is up to you.
Debbie, Keanu, thoughts?
Well, I think we're talking about Dropbox, Debbie,
Yeah.
or ballot Dropbox. I think since ballot is right above it, it being ballot Dropbox kind of brings the two together.
Mm-hmm.
Though if we define the Dropbox as being a place for the ballots, then we could use Dropbox. But why? I mean, what else do Dropbox use? What are they for besides the ballots?
For shoes.
Those ones, no.
The state does say ballot drop
We
box.
should use the ballot Dropbox.
Yeah,
So
that's
let's keep
clear.
that. All right, and we'll just not use the term Dropbox.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Maryland state law definitely puts ballot drop box.
Okay. So are we going to go with the state definition?
Sure.
I think that makes the most sense for now. Yeah.
Okay. And not to go with the next one. Okay. All right. All right, ready to move on? Did you get it yet, Debbie? And
No, I'm
Okay.
following. I'm using 2.0. That's close enough.
it's pretty close. Okay, number 5 is ballot question. Means a proposition formally presented to city registered voters on the ballot for their approval or rejection. Cynthia, is that another one that came from the state or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The absentee definition looks good. It came through.
Okay. So you want to include what's in the box or do we?
Yes, I would include the language about the Maryland state law, just to.
Okay, so both, you would include C 1 and 2?
Yes.
See, number 2 is instructions. I don't think you want to use that in the definition. Maybe just 1.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Do we, yeah, we may not necessarily need to include that.
Maybe that could just be for everyone who needs it.
Yeah, that's fine. Just the first part is fine.
Yeah.
Great. All right, rolling along. All right, so ballot question, that looks okay?
Yep.
All right. And board is already defined in the code. Campaign manager is defined in the code. I am supposed to provide campaign contributions, so sorry, I haven't done that. Same for fundraising, so that's on my ticket. Candidate, here's where you were talking about defining it.
Yeah, this isn't a definition. This is just notes, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. But if you're saying that a candidate begins when they start fundraising, even though they haven't filed, technically a candidate is considered a candidate once they file for the position, and then they continue as candidate forever for that position because there's only one candidate for that position for that year.
Right. I mean, the other way of looking at it is unless they're certified, they're technically not a candidate, but if they're collecting money, they are. Isn't that
Yeah.
the way it works, Ash?
Yeah, the problem is the way our code is structured right now is that once they collect, like I said, $300, then certain requirements click in as though they are a candidate, even though they have not been certified. So we either need to take that out and not have the requirements start complying till they're certified, or we have to rethink. Because the whole point of having that in there earlier is because we know people start doing stuff before the certification is in, and we want to capture that group and impose specific requirements on them. So it just depends. It depends if you want to allow people to just, not worry about it, making enforcements on people until they're actually certified or not.
Well, until they file their prospective candidate.
Yeah, but we don't define prospective candidate. It just automatically clicks in.
Okay, so Ashley, I'm not really clear. So are you suggesting that we go ahead and just redefine it?
Yeah, I mean, my thought is if you're going to keep the language in there that says that once they collect a certain amount of money, then the rules apply, then technically the definition of candidate has to include it. It has to be the earlier of certification or raising X amount of money. If you don't put that into the definition of candidate, then you can't really define candidate and then impose.
Right.
Like you'd have to rework that section and say like, well, you're not a candidate, but you're still subject to these requirements, which I guess you could also do.
All right, so it needs reworking.
Yeah, so it just one way or the other, it needs to, because you are imposing legal requirements on them.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I don't mind if.
Defining a candidate, whether whether they've filed or not.
Right. Well, I think I'm not saying we do it right now, but I mean, if one of you wants to take a stab at it and review code and then come up with a definition for us to.
I'm trying to find where that section is that has the I think it's $300. Sometimes it's all blended together on me.
Has this ever come up?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, then we should do something so it's not a question.
Right.
Yeah, and when it has come up, the result has been, well, the way that code reads now is that even though they haven't certified, they have to kind of be treated as a quasi candidate because of that language.
Right.
Right, so candidate means any person who files or fundraises or has an
Yeah.
open
I'm trying to think where,
campaign finance report.
yeah, because that's the thing. Our definition now is very narrow, but then
Yeah.
there's other sections of the code that lump
Exactly.
extra people into it.
Right.
So it could be candidate means any person who,
Yeah.
colon, A,
How we
files
list
a
it.
certificate of candidacy, B, fundraises over $300, for an office. C, has an open campaign finance report.
Now, do you want to and that, because I know Eileen highlighted this in one of my meetings, where if you have it open, it's also if you have any
Unpaid.
yes, if you did.
Yeah. D, has unresolved fees.
Well, then the campaign fund report's still open.
So are we going to specify what that means for anyone, or do we just want to say your campaign account's open? And we, of course, in communication with the candidate would say, hey, your campaign account is still open, and this is why.
Yeah, see, so here's the problem. So it's section 4.20.030. So in the definition section, we have a definition for candidate, which means they filed. Then in 420.030, we say candidate means an individual who seeks nomination.
Yep.
So already we have two different definitions within our code that are inconsistent. And then under that same section 420.030 is section C is about the $300. So we have a conflict currently existing between our definition section and this section of the code that do not really mesh.
Okay.
That is a big definition there in 420.030.
Yes,
So-
it is.
Debbie, would you be willing to take a look at all of those sections and then just try to come up with a cohesive? I like your idea of kind of making an A, B, C. That would be great.
Yeah. So is it in three sections, Ashley?
Most of it is in 420.030 is where the language I was thinking about comes up. And then you also have, there's an actual definition in the actual definitions section, which is 404.010.
Yeah.
You could always just move 420.030 into definitions.
Yeah. It's one of those weird, I don't know how many elections I've done at this point, but this is just one of those areas where like I knew there was already an existing problem.
Right, but it'd be great if we had that clarified, so, okay.
Okay.
Right, that'd be great. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah.
Thanks, Debbie.
All right, moving on to 11, it's Canvas. It's the entire process of vote tallying, vote tabulation, and vote verification or audit, culminating in producing and certifying the official election results. And is that the state definition too, Cynthia?
Yeah.
Remember, okay. Any thoughts on that? Any?
Not at all.
Okay to move on?
I think so. Yes.
Oh, challenger and watcher are already defined. Central committees defined, contributions, which we're gonna kind of, that may take a change once we look at campaign contributions. All right, so I have to work on that one. Okay, we decided not to include Dropbox, correct? There, okay.
Just ballot Dropbox.
All right, election means any primary, general, special election or referendum election of the city, and I believe that's what the code says.
Correct.
Okay, we have the election cycle, which we still have to kind of rectify with election year and election calendar. So those 3, 12, or 17, 18, and 19 need to just kind of be worked together, and I think I said I would do that. I'll check with Ashley on that. Expenditure, we talked about at the last meeting. This is what's defined in there, and I believe we said that was fine. General election, that's already defined in the code, in the charter. I don't think we decided if independent expenditures was defined yet. Let me look real quick. I have the code pulled up.
Did you want independent expenditures defined?
I'm just looking to see if it already is. I don't think it is.
Yeah, whatever will help us with the situation we had with, Alderman Tierney. Anything to eliminate the gray.
Right. Now, in independent expenditures, there are a number of additional definitions. So I don't know if you want to pull those out or not, but independent expenditures defines campaign material. It defines donation. Okay, so it is in the code. It says independent expenditure means gift, transfer, disbursement, or promise of money or a thing of value by a person expressly advocating the success or defeat of a clearly identified candidate or ballot question. It goes on and on. So it's already in the code. So do we need to move it to definitions or include it in definitions?
Probably.
Is that the one, if it's an independent organization that spends like 3,000 or
Yes,
5,000?
yes.
Okay, so that's that Alderman Savage did that, right? Not long ago, like last election.
No,
I remember putting this in. So we put this in. This is straight from state law. The problem, I think the reason we didn't put it fully into the definition section is because a lot of the definitions in 4.44085 are specific and only used in relation to independent expenditure. So
correct.
campaign material, for instance, only deals with independent expenditures.
Gotcha.
So we'd have to decide if you're going to pull that all out, whether all of those definitions really need to be in the broad section or if they're really just applying to independent expenditure. Because that's why it was done that way, because that's how the state does it. The state does it not in their definition section, but they have a whole separate code section just for independent expenditure that has its own subset of these definitions. So I mean, you could do it both ways. It's just you'd have to move a lot of stuff because in order to understand the independent expenditure definition, you have to understand what email blast means, clearly defined, mass mailing, online platform, public communication, and none of that stuff really qualifying paid digital communication, telephone bank, text blast. So those are all definition subsets that are just specific to independent expenditures. You could put a reference in the definition section that says independent expenditure and do the general definition as further described in that section, so you don't have to move all of it. But it was a very wonky way to did it, and we pretty much mirrored what the state did when we plopped it in.
Right.
Excuse me, Eileen, some of those definitions are in the candidate handbook.
Right. I'm just.
No, I'm just saying, because if
yeah.
you're going to put them in the code, we just need to remember we need to update the handbook.
Right. Well, all of these are already in the code. Now, they're specific here for independent expenditures, but they also have applicability in other expenditures, but we could always reference it. So I don't know, Debbie and Keanu, what are your thoughts about pulling it out or just referencing and keeping it in?
Well, if there's been a problem, if this has raised eyebrows or taken time, before because people were confused, then we should put it in.
Put what in?
Independent expenditures.
Well, it's defined in the code. So I guess the question is, do we want to put it in the definition list and then just refer?
Well, we have expenditure in there.
Right, but independent expenditures is different.
But is it dealing with it's dealing with elections? or having something passed.
Well, independent expenditures has to do with a third party that is providing.
Right. So I'm looking at this capital newspaper article. City Council approves new campaign finance rules. Annapolis ordinance requires more transparency and alignment with state election law. And it's Rob Savage. It passed, but it was coordinating city code with state, bringing it in. The bill aligns with state election law. And I thought that, I mean, it sounds like it's talking about independent expenditures. It's to report large expenditures made in support of or opposition to a political candidate or ballot question.
Right?
Yeah, that was all added. That was the brand new section 4.44085.
Mhm.
Okay, so is that not, it just rang a bell with me.
Yeah, that is what it is, because I did it when we were here. So we debated, I think, putting it into the definition section, but it's just too complicated. So we just created a new full section just on independent expenditures.
Let me just say that it would be so much easier just to leave it there and just include independent expenditures and definitions and saying go see 444050. I mean 05085, and do the same thing with the other definition that we talked about moving, candidate. Do the same thing there. Just refer to the code section where you find the full definition.
Yeah, because I mean they're very clunky definitions, and so to drop them into a definition section, it would make your definition section like huge and hard to read.
Okay. All right, Keanu and Debbie, are you okay with that?
I think that's
I'm okay
fine.
with that.
Though for the candidate, Debbie's still going to do the research.
Well, do I have to, or do I not have homework?
I think it would still be beneficial to do that, because I kind of like the idea of maybe merging it in one place, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think you still have to merge it, because I think you have to take the definitions that are in the definition section and then move it down to the 030 section. And then you probably also have to include a sentence about when the reports or fees are open. So you'd have to move one sentence down and add like a new sentence to what's currently there.
Yeah, so if you don't mind doing it, I think that would be great.
Okay.
All right, I love this one, infamous crime. Where is that? As opposed to a famous crime. No.
Yeah.
What section was that in, Cynthia? I was just curious.
That's
That
already
must be
part
like
of the,
in recount or recall.
that I don't know. That was
That it's in
original
recall.
language.
Okay. Judge is pretty straightforward. We're taking out the mail-in voting. Majority parties already defined, partisan organizations defined, party or political party defined, persons, political agents defined, political committees and their principal minority. I think we're already down. Then we talked about doing recount. And I did look, I didn't see where there was a definition. So Keanu, if you want to come up with a definition.
Sure. I did have, I have the state definition that I can share.
Okay.
If that's all right, if we want to go with that one, or at least kind of, phrase it according to our city.
Okay.
I have it right here. I can, would you like Cynthia for me to share? But it's also right on the site.
Okay, I can find it.
Okay. And it starts off with a recount is the process of resolving a challenge to find the final vote. It's all there. Recount guide, State Board of Elections, Maryland.
Okay, great. So we'll add that to review next month.
Great.
All right, the others are all currently in. I don't see any others that I have added. Does anybody have others that they want to add? Up to
No.
40 definitions. Maybe 40. Okay. All right. So how about the plan is that those of us that have little homework assignments, which I think we all have a little something, get those in, and then at our next meeting, we'll have a final document to review and vote on. How's that sound?
That's fine. I did, now that we were thinking about it, and we don't have to add it, but since it is a part of the process for signing or signatures, we have campaign chair. Is that on? We don't really talk about that at all.
Managers on there, right?
Well, if you can put campaign
They're
chair, you
different.
put in campaign treasurer.
Manager.
Because
Oh.
treasurer is here, but it's not. So I was
Campaign
just,
manager is there.
yeah. So I know the chair is a little different than the manager.
Some, I mean, it depends on the campaign. Some are, you know, two people and you have the candidate and the treasurer. Others are, you know, you have a campaign manager and the candidate and a treasurer, but the chair and the manager sometimes are the same.
Can be.
Yeah, because the manager is defined as the candidate's representative to exercise general overall responsibility for the conduct of a political campaign, which I would feel like would be essentially the same thing as the chair.
Yeah.
Usually the chair is more of a fundraiser and the manager is the person who runs the campaign.
Right.
And that's why, and because I know that they can sign the document when you're filing. So I just wanted to bring that up because I have the chair or the treasurer that could sign with you. But we don't talk about the chair. So I was just, now since we're talking about it, I figured I'd throw that out there. Not saying we have to, but just to think about.
Yeah, often it's a chair is an honorary position, but if it's a small campaign, they're one and the same. They're doing both jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
Should we put on number 7 campaign manager / chair?
They could be totally different positions.
All right.
We do use chair, so we use political committee chair, which is not a campaign, it's a different.
Well, it looks like we need a review.
Yeah, but it does look like it might, Keanu's right that it kind of goes back and forth, which is not really that shocking.
We put something in there just saying.
This code has driven me nuts for the last 10 years.
Seems like.
We're here to help.
Yeah, well, and then here, election reports required. It says he's right. The chair and the treasurer of any central committee, political committee, or partisan organization. So I feel like we use chair not with respects to the candidates, but with other entities, but it does get confusing. And we don't define it.
So am I hearing that we should define it, or do we keep campaign manager and just extend it to say this may include a campaign chair?
Yeah, I kind of like the second, to be honest.
Because a chair is a person designated or appointed.
Yeah.
To exercise general overall responsibility. So
I feel like it could. I feel like I like the second option better.
I agree.
Okay, so may also include, or may also be
referred to. I don't know.
Or interchangeable, I think is what I had said. May be interchangeable.
Yeah.
Let me look that up and give you some recommendations.
Sure,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Yeah, but we do it is quirky in our code.
Not our code.
No, never are. Lovely.
All right, well, this is all good. All right, any others? Debbie, Keanu, Regina, Ashley?
Nope.
Bring it up now or forever hold your peace.
Let's go.
There's always next year.
Lord.
Okay, all right. So we'll take a look at this again. Hopefully we'll get this all done. Okay, all right. All right, we're already at 8:16, so let's pick our poison for what to do next.
Is the county attorney coming on, you said?
Well, that's an item I was gonna put under new business.
Right, so I'm just wondering if
Oh, they're not coming. We just have to discuss
Talk
it.
about an update.
oh, I see. Okay, good. Okay.
What else have we got up?
Fees.
Fees.
That's a simple one there, I think. So
Well, when,
kind
well, when Cynthia and I were talking about it, we kind of got caught up on definition of pre-election and post-election. This is also where the election year came up. So I'm looking at the draft for the fee schedules updated for Title IV elections.
Got it.
So, and Regina, you can help us with this. I've always kind of thought pre-election meant we were in an election year. So for instance, and then post was after until we started the next election, meaning the election kind of calendar. So for us, it's kind of been like this July will be a post-election campaign fund report. But then once we get started and we're a few, weeks out before the election, that's pre-election, but that doesn't completely jive with what we call the calendar cycle or the calendar year. Does that make sense? It's just, I think we have to define it better, or we could just make it all the same.
right. So are you saying 500 or 250? Is that what you mean by the same? One or the other?
Yeah, I kind of like all the same. It'd be easier because then what happens if it crosses over from?
No, they would say no. I did it.
Right.
Yeah, because or they have continuing. Like, when do we know that they exactly? I think it would be simpler if it was all the same.
Uh-huh.
And a late report is a late report.
Excuse me, Cynthia. We
Yeah.
talked about some of these reports, and some of this stuff is in the current fee schedule, correct? Because we gave it to the finance department already.
Let me look. Well, let's see here.
Yeah, because see, election cycle is the day after the day of a general election and ending on the day of the next general election.
Mm-hmm.
So that's election cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But in theory, you could have people who have things that sort of continue over from the day of a general election into the next election cycle. So they would have from one election cycle to the next.
Right.
So those fees that are in red are not in the proposed fee schedule. They would have to be an amendment.
But
right
never
now,
mind.
the only thing in the fee schedule is filing for nomination for mayor and alderman in
Which
central
is
committee.
ridiculous.
Well, we have those fees, some of those fees already in code, so they just weren't included in this section.
They weren't put in the fee schedule.
They weren't in the fee schedule.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's why, but I did give Jody, after your meeting, we met because we had a budget meeting, and I did give her the language about the 250 and the 500.
Right.
So I'm not understanding why we have a separate piece of legislation with the same thing in it if it's already sent to finance as an update to the fee schedule.
Sounds like it didn't get on the one that was forwarded. Is that correct?
But they're currently writing the amendments because the legislation was adopted on first reader. So I don't know where they are in the process of creating the amendments to the fee schedule.
All right.
So that may be something we have to talk to Jody about.
Right.
Jody or Katie. Because
Well,
I did give it to him because you guys voted on it at your previous meeting. That's why I was saying you did it already.
Right. Okay.
And we knew it was a finance document, finance needed it.
Yes.
Well, we also wanted to make sure that it also applied to amended reports. not just the
Yeah,
first reports, all reports.
yes.
Right. So what do you want the fees to be?
I'm not saying the fees should change. I'm just saying maybe we don't need them written in a fee schedule for in the election section in a separate document
Right.
because they're already going to be in the city's proposed fee schedule.
I will make sure that these are part of an amendment for the budget doc. I just want to make sure that everyone's okay with the fees that are
Right.
in this resolution. And then I will pass the fees on to finance as an amendment.
Okay.
Looks
Okay.
right to me, right? This looks like what we discussed.
So you want the maximum late fee at 500 for pre-election and 250 for after the election?
Right, and do we need to actually stipulate all reports? Because we want to make sure that that's amended reports are included, or is that already kind of a given?
No, it's not a given.
Mhm.
And that legislation amendment is going to, it won't be in conflict. It still would have pre-election and post-election. Because I know we were just talking about it being one. I'm just figuring out
Right,
if
well,
we do one.
we've already voted on pre-election and post-election,
did.
if I'm hearing Regina correct.
We did.
Okay, so maybe we should just leave it as that, and then,
And then did you want a line on corrected reports?
I don't know if it needs to be in the fee schedule or it needs to be added to code.
It should be, any fees should be in the fee schedule and not in the code.
I would say yes,
Okay.
because those are the ones that are usually the most problematic.
Mhm.
So do we say late fee for all campaign fund reports and be specific about that?
You could say including any amendments or any amended reports or something like that.
Does anybody have preference? It could be that, or it could be late fee for initial and amended reports required during.
Yeah, the fees are the same, right?
Yeah, we're gonna keep the fees as the same, but what we're really adding is that they're going to apply to the amended reports.
Right. I would just say for initial or amended.
And
Okay.
amended, yeah.
Yeah.
So it should be initial and amended reports.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, so let's add that and that'll keep it simple.
Did you want that in the same line as pre-election late fees for reports?
I think so.
So just add the and
Late fee for
amended reports?
initial and amended campaign fund reports. Are you okay with that, Regina?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the same thing for
late,
just carry it all the way through.
okay.
Okay.
For pre and post.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we'll just keep doing what we're doing on how we're interpreting that. Okay. Okay.
Now, are we going to be shared that amendment document? Is that what you're saying? The
Sorry?
document that shows, are we going to be shared that document with to show the amendments because it was passed on first reader? I heard.
Yes, I will forward that to
Great. Okay.
to Eileen, and
Okay.
so that everybody could see what the amendment is going to be to the fee schedule.
Regina, do we need to have a motion for this and a vote?
I don't think so, because if she's updating it in your draft, you can just approve it as the changes are made to the legislation.
Okay, so we wait to get
Because
the
it,
legislation.
yeah, because once she puts it in and you can actually see what the whole bill looks like, you might have some additional changes and you're gonna approve the legislation as one piece, I think.
Okay, okay, all right, sounds good.
Mhm.
All right, any other comments on this piece?
Yeah, this is it.
Okay. All right, moving along. Okay, so we have done reporting deadlines. Did I miss that, Cynthia, in terms of what you sent out?
Deadline.
I have draft 2.2.
I have 2.2.
I just have to find it then. All right, so feedback on that?
Looked okay to me.
Hmm.
We put the fee waiver in there, which was, something we've talked about.
Well, yeah, I had a question about that.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I do too.
So, when you talk about financial hardship, there's something in terms of the fee for candidacy, which has to put in documentation. So I think we need to expand a little bit in terms of what are we thinking about waivers? I mean, what is it what's the process of it? And I don't know, I just felt like it needs some more work.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that when we talked about the fee waiver, it wasn't necessarily for financial hardship.
But it could be.
It could be, certainly. But it could be for, some kind of emergency or, something that happened that, did not allow.
So we can follow what the state has if we would like.
Well, I actually put something together, but didn't get it out. Let me see. The state, I think, goes into a little bit more than maybe what we want, but I'd have to look at it again. What are you seeing, Keanu?
It talks about here, there are different, in an order list that you can check. There are different options here. And the first one is administrative error of any kind on the part of the division. The lateness is due to extenuating circumstances, an example, i.e. physical illness or death in the family. The late report is the first late report and allows the committee to close or contains minimal financial activity. The fee will cause undue financial hardship. This is what we were just talking about. If the liability of the fine is the personal responsibility of the officers, or computer problems occurred which made timely filing impossible. However, the filer still must have demonstrated a good faith effort, actually it says, to timely file.
Right, I think that's what I had looked at also.
Sounds good.
That's from Jared.
Oh yeah, here I've just found it. So waiver of late fees, yeah, it was one, the administrative, it's all of them, but I took out the last one, the computer problems, since we don't have. And then it was also, there is the current code in 4.20050, you have to make a sworn statement when you're claiming financial hardship. So I guess my question was, if we go with these as a possibility for a waiver, do we want to include documentation in a sworn statement? Maybe that could just be on the form.
Sworn statement is already in there in BI.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I personally wouldn't want to have to, get too involved looking at someone's reason, financial reason.
I think the idea behind this one statement is if evidence came up later that there really didn't seem to be financial hardship, you could go back and say, well, you swore that there was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right, well,
But if we have other things in there too, you know, like other than financial hardship, I mean, they need to have a valid, good reason. And if it is financial hardship, they do have to have some kind of, you know, backup to that. I mean, it says we could conduct a reasonable investigation. You know, it's just that none of us have time or desire to have to do that, but this is something that shouldn't be taken lightly, but if there's other reasons why it's late and we've given them other choices, then if it isn't a financial reason, they have other reasons, you know, there's other choices there for why it's late.
all right, well, we can also put some of this into, we should have some sort of waiver request form that needs to be completed and submitted.
Like when you pay your taxes?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's going to request a waiver, we should have some sort of consistent way of doing it.
Yeah.
So if we have a form and then we can ask for, you know, an explanation for
Right.
for the request.
Yeah, I like that. There's no waivers now, no waiver form now.
No.
That's
All
a
right,
good
well-
idea.
This is not really a way to process in place.
Okay, so we're looking at the waiver for the late fees.
So do you want a section that says fill out a waiver form, something like that, instead of a sworn statement?
Let me get something to you, Cynthia, because I did work on this and I just can't find
Okay.
my version of it. But
Well, I see the form here from the state.
right. So we can do a form, but this. All right, so I guess though we probably need some sort of motion. I don't think we have voted on saying that we are willing to include we are willing to consider granting waivers for late filing fees. Or can we just, is that another instance, Regina, we can just do it when we approve the language?
I think that makes sense.
So much writing. Okay, all right, well, maybe she can get back to us on that. Okay, so Cynthia, I think what we'll do then for that is work on that a little bit more.
Okay.
Now there was. Now on the deadlines, we did want to add the language to 4.44.100 to change. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at this now. Let's see.
Where are you?
I'm on. I'm sorry, never mind. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused with this. All right, let's move on. That will need some work and then we'll do that all together. Let's just try to get to ballot questions because we still have a number of things on the thing. Surplus funds, we've already kind of made that decision, so that just needs to be inserted. That was in our last minutes, correct?
Yes.
So that just needs to go to Cynthia to be included, okay? So Cynthia, we'll get that. That's from our last minutes, what the surplus funds are going to be. So, oh, Ashley, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, just real quick. Regina said she had a power surge and she will try to log back in shortly.
Oh, okay.
Right, thanks.
The ballot question, I think, again, we've already made that decision. So that just needs to be inserted in for Cynthia.
Right. You made the decision on the percentage?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So it's 10%. 10% of registered voters as of the beginning of the year, but we really should specify what the
You
year
said
is.
I thought you said January 1.
Well, we did, but when what we decided last month and what we voted on did not specify, because I just read it.
Because it's of that year, whatever the year is.
Right, but which year? Is it the year that the petition is formulated, or is it the petition? I have to
Yeah.
move. I'm running out of juice. Um,
So if it's not the year that the petition was formulated, it would be the year prior? Or are you saying the year?
The year
I
it
think
was
our intent
started?
when we first talked about it was that it was going to be January 1 of the year that the ballot question procedure was starting.
Yes.
So it's 10% of registered voters as of, but we did also talk about January 1 as 10% of registered voters as of January 1 of the year the petition's initiated.
Mm-hmm.
There's no date on initiation. It's not like there's no, they register that they're initiating the petition, they just do it. So unless you put a provision in there that they have to notify the city that they're starting an initiative, you can't use that.
So would we then say when it's brought forth, when we actually have it in our, when the petition is submitted?
Well,
Yeah.
they have to know before the,
Yeah, because how are they supposed to know how many signatures to get?
Right.
so many details.
We're doing it though. This gotta do it. Right, so we're laying out, then we're
So
gonna.
the first procedure for a ballot question is whenever a proposed charter amendment or other question is to be submitted for popular approval to the voters of the city or to the voters of any area proposed to be annexed, blah, 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 shall certify the question to the board on or before the day on which a certificate of candidacy must be filed under this title. This chapter applies to the submission of questions for which provision is not made by state law. So the question has to be certified first because that's what's going to go on the petition. So can we say as of the calendar year in which
Mm-hmm.
the question is certified or submitted? It's not certified, submitted.
That's what we were talking about.
It's certified after it's submitted. It's certified by the council.
Right. But at that point, when it's, I guess, either when it's submitted or when it's certified, then we tell them, okay, it was certified, August 1st of 2024. So that means you have to get 10% of the registered voters as of January 1, 2024. Does that make sense? You could make it the day of the
certification.
The certification.
Now, when you say that, Eileen, I think that would give to it being possibly more voters. Because if it's January 1, we don't know. It
vacillates.
We don't know.
Well, they have to already go above and beyond to cover any that are tossed out.
Right. Ashley, do you have any thoughts on the wording of when to say the date that you pick your number?
No, I mean, because really they're all kind of arbitrary because this number doesn't, it's not like, like January 1st and things stay static, or like the election opens and it stays static. So any date you pick is going to be kind of like an arbitrary
Right. I think,
day.
and I think we also talked about it may not be possible to go back and say, okay, it's now August 1st. What was the number of people on January 1st? We may not be able to do that. So it may just be, we should get the date
Yeah.
on the day that
It might just operationally be whatever the county's able to pull up.
right.
Because they just might, I have no idea. They just might not be able to pull up.
All right, well, I'm kind of proposing it will be the date when the proposed question is certified.
That seems like that would be the easiest for the county to do.
I agree to this.
Me too.
So then you need to amend your
Yeah, the last motion we made, which we did
Yeah.
pass. So do we want to make that motion then?
Sure.
Okay, so I move that we amend our last motion of using the voter totals from January 1 of that year the petition was brought forth to now having it be the date/day the certification took place. Debbie,
Now,
we need this. Oh,
by
yes.
by
The date it's
certified, you
certified by
mean,
the city council.
Yes, the data is certified by the city council.
but okay, but they don't certify, they pass a resolution.
Oh, we were saying that that's what the process.
Hmm.
So, okay,
Um,
so are we going to then do the resolution? I do have a motion on the
Hold
floor.
on,
about
hold on,
just-
hold on, hold on, hold on.
No, I
Listen,
don't think they do.
all official actions of the city council are in the form of a resolution. So if it was a petition, it would be added to a resolution with language on the first page, the petition attached, and then it would have to do a roll call vote and approve it. So it would have to be in the form of legislation, which would be a resolution.
Right. So when we could say when it's certified by adoption of the resolution.
Okay, so I'm going to update my motion to say, I move to amend the last motion, or the last passing of the motion, where we're going to use the vote totals not from January 1 of the year the petition was brought forth, but instead the date/day the question has been certified by a resolution passed by the city council.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thanks. It was complicated.
I know, I'm
Good,
writing it
good,
down.
good,
Yeah.
good.
10%.
All right. Now, the other thing that we need to, so that's the number from which we derive the 10%. So we still have to insert that the number of signatures required is 10% of registered voters, inclusive of at least 250 voters from each of the 8 wards, which is what we passed in our last meeting.
Right.
Okay. All right, so anything else on ballot question?
Not in regards to this. I think we should speak though strategically if we're looking to bring one forth for 2025. And maybe that could be tonight or not, but as we're getting this through, I know the question would be who's going to bring up the ballot questions if we decide on this whole nonpartisan, etc. So just throwing that out there for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, the other thing that we haven't drafted though is the, no, we did put it in there. The ability of the city council to initiate.
Right.
Did we
That's
not?
the first one.
Mhm.
Right. All right, I'm just looking at it again.
I
Okay.
think that's in there.
Yep. A1A.
Yeah, I just didn't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else we need to do for that?
Not that I see for tonight.
Okay.
And Eileen, you were talking about the signatures required section that Cynthia will update, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So we'll have to look at all of this stuff again before we do a final vote on all of it. This takes a while.
It does.
Okay, so I think we've hit all of those. Okay, fair election practices is part of old business. So are we okay? Let me back up. Proposed legislation for review. I think we've hit all of them. Mail-in voting, penalties, fees, reporting deadlines, surplus funds, and ballot.
What's surplus funds?
Well, that's where Cynthia needs to add the piece that we've already decided on.
The nonprofit.
That's the third piece where you can give it to a nonprofit.
Oh, right. Okay.
I saw I had provisional ballots and canvassing. We did do that.
It basically, all it does is switch it to state law procedures.
Okay, I just want to make sure that okay.
It's literally, all it basically says is it'll be done in accordance with state law provisions, which is what we do anyway, unofficially, because when you have the county board run us, that's what they do.
Great.
Okay, we good?
Yeah,
Okay, so fair election practices is the next item on the agenda. I apologize. I at our last meeting said that I would work something together, but I haven't been able to. I was actually quite sick earlier this month.
Oh. Okay.
So just didn't get to it. But I will. So I'll get that for our
You're
next meeting.
forgiven.
We'll get.
You didn't want to hear me, whatever. So
Lot going on.
any other old business? Nope. Okay, so move on to new business. So the county, let me pull up the piece. Regina sent me an email saying that, I just want to read it to you all. That the county attorney made a formal request to add the MOU to the next agenda for the county board's review and approval acceptance. So I did talk with Ashley about what exactly they wanted us to do, because the MOU I thought was still kind of in transit. So I wasn't really clear on what we needed to do. So I don't know, Ashley, if you can tell the group
Okay,
a little bit what your understanding of what we need to do is.
To clarify, it is an attorney for the county board of elections, not to be confused with Anne Arundel County's attorney.
Okay.
So this is an attorney who works just for the Anne Arundel County Board of Elections.
Okay.
Not for Anne Arundel. But he called. So yes, the MOU is still under review by him and his clients, and they have some suggested changes, I guess they're considering. But he asked me while I was talking to him about that, whether the city and you guys had made a formal request to get something on the Anne Arundel County Board of Elections agenda, to, I think, one, for sure, say that they're willing to do our election, and two, maybe to approve the MOU. What I need to get clarification on, which I didn't have a chance, I wasn't able to get a hold of him today, but is whether, see, like our city council approves the decision to delegate it, but then they essentially to delegate the election activities to the Anne Arundel County Board of Election. But as for the MOU, they sort of shift the responsibility to finish it back to us. I don't know if the county board works the same way, in that do they just need it on their agenda to just approve that they're willing to help us? Or do they need it on their agenda to approve us, to help us, and they need to approve the final MOU? And I don't know if they need to do that second one. I think we at least have to do number one, which is get to them to say, yes, we will help you. And then the outstanding question is, do we need to hold off on putting it on their agenda till the MOU is final, or does that not matter? And I don't know the answer on that one, but
Right.
it's on my list to ask.
Okay, and I called Trudy McFall today, who is the chair of the Anne Arundel County Board of Elections, and haven't had a chance to get back to her. So it sounds like we just need more information before taking any action.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you guys do need to take some sort of action to get it on their agenda. It's just when we need to time it.
Okay, so we'll hopefully get that on the agenda for May then. Okay.
How, is there a timeline for this?
No, the county Board of Elections kind of does it at their own speed.
I mean, is it, yeah, time sensitive where we should go ahead and at least write a letter? You know, with just the
No, I don't.
request?
I mean, I don't think so. Because I mean, I think the intention is that they have every intent of helping us. So I don't think that's the issue. It's more like the formality of, doing that step.
Yeah, the process.
And they're so caught up in the upcoming primary, to be
Right,
honest.
yeah.
I mean, if I'm correct in remembering it, our last go around, it was 1.5 years before the MOU got approved. By the time we submitted, we submitted it. So it's not as time sensitive. So I'd rather, if we're going to take a vote, be clear on what we need to be voting on.
Yeah.
So we'll try to get that straightened out. Okay. All right, let's go into recount. So Kiana, you sent some information out, which was very helpful. And what would you like for us to decide?
Well, I think that it would be pertinent for us to at least consider if Cynthia would be able to, and we can also share this with her, maybe drafting something that we could propose for there to be a process for an automatic recount. I know that there's some suggestions listed in here, and according to the state, if we want to go or abide by the state, we're talking about the 5% or the 0.25%. Now, our state doesn't grant that. It does lay out reasons as to when it would be not out of pocket for the petitioner, though the petitioner does usually pay up front. Now it says here the outcome is changed, or the petitioner has gained votes equal to 2% or more, or if the margin of difference is 0.25 or less. Now that's the cost of a recount. But I think that we should think about the automatic recount process and what percentage we would want that to kick in. So I'm not certain if maybe we need more time to look over this document, but I think that we should consider, and hopefully Cynthia can help in drafting something that would show that.
Yeah,
Well, I
what,
think-
It's pretty consistent that the
Go ahead, Debbie.
suggestion there should be an
well,
automatic.
what caught my eye was the last page.
I'm glad you did, because I said let me add a couple more to that.
Because well, you go through all the different states and all, but whenever there's an executive summary, now it is from Fair Vote, so it is from a specific organization, but their executive summary at the very bottom talks about the cost and is the juice worth the squeeze, the cost and the results. And they came up, given on all their research, that they recommend a 0.1 initial margin as a threshold, for automatic recounts. That has a good chance of turnover. That's where you start finding turnovers in the outcomes, and therefore the government would pay for the cost. Anything more than that as a differential the margin is not as likely to cause a difference. A larger margin should be funded more by the petitioner because it's not as plausible. So that is a 0.1.
10%. Yeah. Well, kind of 10%, but
And remember, we're
not
small.
really.
We're really small. I mean, the city of Annapolis is small, and then our registered voters is smaller, and those who vote is even smaller. So,
I mean, I don't want to put something as an automatic if it's not needed. I mean, we've had one recount, which was in the last election. And it was very close. I guess the question, I mean, one of the reasons people do like the automatic recount is because then the city pays for it.
exactly.
One of the questions in the last recount was, it comes down to who pays for it. So one way of addressing it might be not necessarily making an automatic recount, but allowing it to come out of campaign funds. Right now, I believe the code reads that it has to come out, the candidate has to pay for it, which could create a financial hardship. So I don't know how you feel about that, Keanu.
Well, I would say that if it's not common, what is the strain really for the city? I think that if we do, because we're talking about, let's say a candidate, it does meet that threshold. I think that is, it's less time because automatically the city will say, okay, let's hurry up and do this recount in partnership with the county. And it does alleviate some of that confusion for maybe a new candidate who meets that threshold. I do agree, though, that we can do what you just mentioned, though, if we're looking at recounting, I think we could also offer that automatic recount process. So I think that's what the conversation was mainly about, was the automatic recount.
So in an automatic recount, does the candidate have the option of picking what type of recount they want? So for instance, there's 4 types of recounts that currently can be done, and they all have different process and a different price point, not to get just fiscal, but I'm not really clear if an automatic recount goes to the higher level type of recount, or so like the first recount is usually just a kind of a paper count. I mean, there's different ones. The highest one is when there's actually it's the canvas is reconvened and you actually physically look at every single ballot, count it. And that can also be done on a screen. And that's how it was done the last time. That is a more, not a cumbersome, but it's a more complicated process. So I guess my question is when you're talking about making an automatic recount, what type of recount are you considering being automatic? And would the candidate have an option to request a different one? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's important right there. Well, I think that's up for us to determine. For me personally, I'm not, this is about the people. So, I mean, personally, if I'm sharing whatever is less taxing, whatever is the most effective and efficient way to do it. And if we're talking about offering, maybe we don't necessarily offer the option more than we say that this is the type of recount that it would be. And would you know what the cheapest option is or what the less expensive option is? Is it the paper one, or is it
it's basically the paper one. I have when we did the last one. I don't know if I have that spelled out, but I think that's just something we need to explore a little bit. There are currently 4 types of recounts.
Yeah.
And so the candidate gets to pick what type of recount they want currently, and then they pay for it. And they pay for it out of out of their own funds. They don't take it out of campaign funds. So I think that's one question where, you know, if that's a question to be answered, whether it's an automatic recount or a candidate requested recount, is can they take it, is it a personal expense or can they take it out of the campaign?
Yeah.
Then the other question would be, with a recount that you make automatic, what type of recount is possible? Is it, does the candidate get to choose, or is it just one option? And then if they want a different option, again, that comes out of campaign. I don't, you know, those are just the questions I have when I was looking at all of this.
Those are key questions. And yep, and I think that's what this is for, us to see what is best. So what would you recommend? What should we recommend? I mean, what are the options that we find to be the best? Now, you said that in the last election that we did the scanning. So is that the normal or the usual option that's selected? What's the one that's usually done? That's what I think. For consistency, we can just go along with that one. Or which is the option that candidates usually decide? You know, what's the data on that? So we would
I mean, we've only had the one, so I mean, that was the one that wanted kind of the full recount. So what it's done at the state level, where they might have more frequent recounts, I don't know.
Cynthia,
I'm sorry. I was just looking at the recount guide from the state, and it looks like that the 4 different options are based on how the vote is done wherever you are. Because it has option 1 is manual tabulation of printed reports from early voting, election day, mail-in, yada. Option 2 is rescan of voted paper ballots involved in the recount using precinct tabulations or a high-speed scanner.
The link's in that document too, Eileen, if you need it. The first one.
Yeah, option 3 is a manual recount of paper ballots. And then option 4 is a manual recount of ballot images. So those would be images from the all computerized voting system.
Right. And that was the one that was chosen in the recount we did in 2021.
Okay. Now, for all of these options, is it to say that one would provide a different result than the other? Because if that's not the case, then
They shouldn't.
yeah, they should. That's what so if that's not the case, then it's more comes down to either the financial or the amount of time / work that it would take to count these ballots. So what are your thoughts on that right there? And Cynthia, would you recommend anything to, or even Ashley or Madam Clerk?
I haven't voted in Annapolis, so I don't know how it runs.
Well, I think again, there's there's 2 issues here. One is automatic recount. Do we want an automatic recount? And if we want to have an automatic recount, what does that entail? What does that include? Okay, so does that include, and I would think that we would decide what that includes as opposed to or does it mean letting the candidate make that choice? So I don't know what other jurisdictions might do that, but those would be the things. If you do an automatic recount, what type of recount is it? And who has the choice in determining that? Or if there is a choice, okay? And then the other one is if the candidate has to pay for it, where does that money come from? So Debbie?
So just just saying automatic recount, just saying recount gives one the sense of an issue, right? It just sounds like there could be issues, which is why you have to recount, which is not real trust, it just doesn't sound like we're trusting ourselves. But given that, I like the idea of allowing candidates to use campaign funds instead of personal funds. So that is something, certainly plausible, at least.
Yes.
To allow that. If we have 30,000 voters and we do that point, the 0.1%, that's 30 votes. I mean, I voted, I have voted here over 30 years, but I don't remember how many elections are 30 or less. I know there's not a ton of votes and they get split up between, a different number of candidates. So I don't know how often, if we went with that 0.1% as an automatic recount, that would be for an election that differs by 30 or less votes.
Well, the last election, the recount that was done, it was 5 votes difference. So, but I thought that 0.1. Well, we'd have to determine what's the trigger point for it. The other question I have is in an automatic recount, this is just, I don't know, because I'm still learning about it.
Yes.
Would a candidate have an option not to have it done? I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but could a losing candidate say, I'm fine with it. I accept it.
That was like, I think that was Josh Cohen, actually, because the Panelides Cohen election was really, really close. But I think Cohen didn't have a desire to do a recount.
Right.
I could be misremembering that. My apologies if I misremembered it. I was up till like 4 a.m. 3 days in a row for that election.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, yes, me and Regina.
Yes,
but
he did not request that recount.
Election. It was really close, but I don't think. I mean, maybe if Josh Cohen had different options, maybe he would have gone a different way. But I don't. He didn't pursue a recount, even though it was very close.
Or maybe he didn't want to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
Well, I think we still have a lot of questions and we're still learning a bit. Could we, before we start asking anything to be drafted into legislation, maybe take a look at that. I think we're in somewhat agreement that we're willing to consider a recount, funding for the recount to come out of a campaign fund if a candidate requests it. But I think we might need to think a little bit more about the automatic in terms of what threshold we would trigger an automatic. What are the options for an automatic in terms of what type would be included and who makes that decision, the city or the candidate?
Okay. So do you want to talk about the next meeting? Because is that just you all are gonna do some more research as well as myself, and we're gonna decide from there, or?
Well, I'd love to hear from what you said. I mean, you've done some really good research here to see if there's anything else that you want to add to it, or if you want to make a particular recommendations, fine too. So, yeah, I'm just curious about, like I said, with the automatic. I think it sounds like we're all open to considering it.
Right.
And then you also brought up the good point. I mean, there can be recount. Right now, we're focusing on recounts for candidates, but what about a recount on a question? Which goes along with what we're doing with the ballot question. And I don't really know enough about that. So lots of good information, maybe get a little bit more information and look at it next month and come up with a little, we can have some more discussion then and maybe come up with something that we want to consider drawing up for legislation or what the next step would be. I think we have a little bit more time on this issue than with some of the others, like mail-in ballots.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think I'm gonna I think using the national conference site in the 23 states and DC having the automatic or mandatory, it seems that there's consistency in the 0.5 or 1%, or even as Debbie mentioned with the 0.1%. So, okay, I think we should look back at this. Agreed.
Well, we might also want to find out from the county what we can
Sure.
do, since they don't do, they don't have an automatic, since they don't do it. Okay, great.
And then, as you just mentioned, right, because then they may have to do more of the work, but okay.
All right. Lots of good information. Thank you, Keanu.
Yeah, thank you, Keanu.
Absolutely glad to.
Okay, we're running late. So the last piece for new business is response to election task force recommendations. We discussed it briefly in November. I took some notes, but I think we need to start thinking about coming up with a response. The task force did meet with the city council today in a work session and did go through a number of things. I was happy to be able to report when asked that this group has been starting to work on some of the things, particularly the ballot question, and start moving forward. So that will be a discussion. I think we'll have to decide. Like to do it in May, but it may be a June discussion. Excuse me, and see how much we can get done. But we should come up with a response of some sort. Okay. The other thing I'd like to think about doing, if not next month, certainly in June, as we at least start a new fiscal year, is looking at what our priorities had been stated when we first came on a couple of years ago, and see where we are with those and if we want to update those too. I think we've done a lot of good work, but I think it's always good to look back and see what's been accomplished and do we have new priorities or move some down the road.
I'm just
good.
The other day, yes.
Okay, anything else for general discussion? Okay, do you have any items, Regina?
No.
Oh, she's out.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Ashley, anything else? There is a boards and commission training this Saturday, or
Oh, right.
attending.
I'm going. Are you all?
I'll be there.
Actually, I would have loved to. Yeah, I have Greenscape on Saturday.
Okay, all right. So
Maybe you could do both.
I
It's
love
an all
to.
day. I mean, the committee thing is all day.
Yeah, I have.
It's what, 9:30 to 3 or something? I
It's
remember what.
9:30.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all day and morning and day.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Are we gonna
Got
meet?
a lot done.
Yeah, we're gonna meet virtually now for the meetings.
Oh, that's a good. I'm glad you brought that up. I'd like to consider meeting in person at our next meeting, if it's possible. I think I've checked with Ashley, and it may not be possible for her to be in attendance. Regina, I don't know if you can do it in May.
Yeah, scratches out.
I can.
You can?
I can, but if I have a choice, I'd like to do virtual.
Well, I think we've talked earlier, before about trying to get them done maybe 2 or 3 times, at least a couple of times a year. This would be the third, so that would, if we met this month, then we could reconvene and maybe do a live one in September. What are your thoughts, Debbie and Keanu? You want to?
Yeah, I mean, there's goods and bads to both. So I'm flexible. I could do either.
Yeah, I will say that it was nice to have one in person, then maybe 2 or 3 virtual, and then one in person again. So even if it's once
quarter,
I think I like that. I'm not opposed to that.
Quarterly.
A quarterly in-person meeting is all right for now. If you are okay. Maybe when elections start coming closer, we may need to meet in person more, but saves that travel. I know Debbie.
I'd love to have a happy hour with you all, but I don't know if that's allowed.
Can't say it on camera, Debbie.
Get closer to elections, we have mandatory ones from the county.
That'd be something.
So, all right. So, do I have a motion that we meet in a live meeting next month in May.
Yeah, I move that the Board of Supervisors of Elections meet in person in City Council chambers on May 16th, 7:00.
All right, I'll second that motion.
Yeah,
Right, all in favor?
I
All right.
Are the council chambers available? Remember, we were going over that with Mark and wasn't planning.
Yes.
So
They
we're
are
good.
available, Regina?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Supposed to be.
Is that planning? I thought planning commission was kind of,
They went back to their original
They
Thursday
moved
date.
because we asked them to.
Yeah.
I'm glad they got in
very appropriate.
All right.
Try to take us.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
No, we don't want to. No, I move that the Board of Supervisors of Elections adjourn at 9:18 on April 18th.
All right, I'll second that adjournment.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. I know it was a long meeting, but I
Right,
think
good
we
night.
got a lot
Thanks,
accomplished.
Ashley, and
Yes, we'll come back.
Thank
Regina,
you, and Cynthia.
Cynthia's too,
Cynthia, Ashley,
sure.
and Madam Clerk. Good night.
All right,
Peace.
thank you,
Thank-
Julian.
Thank you, Julian.
Oh, yeah, Julian.